Hello there and welcome to SME On Point. My name is Diabo Sito. Thank you so much for staying with SABC News. This week, the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana tabled his 2024 budget speech. Ahead of the speech, the small medium enterprises had their own wish list, among them being that greater attention and allocation be given to the development of small businesses, particularly in the townships. Others wanted the minister to make binding commitments to particularly ending load shedding that is impacting on their businesses. To get a view from post the budget, I'm joined by Bheki Maivens Twala, the President of the Township Economic Commission of South Africa, and Karabo Mashokhane, the CEO of 2020 Insight. Gentlemen, thank you so much and welcome to SME On Point. First of all, the budget was obviously much anticipated. A lot of surprises came in. What stood out for me, particularly along with everyone else, is the fact that, you know, there are those reserves that we now can tap into that will help lower the debt burden, and also economic growth projected to be a little higher for 2024. On the on-site and top line, how did you find the budget and how it or lack thereof accommodated small business owners? Let me start with you, Mr. Karabo.
No, thank you very much. So I think one of the, firstly, to deal with the issue of the reserves, my understanding is that is essentially profits on the reserves that we have that have accumulated because of the currency depreciation. And what that means is that as a currency, if the currency should depreciate further, then those profits will increase, right? And we really run into a risk only when the currency strengthens, which generally would mean that our economy is doing better. So I think it's a relatively, I know that there's been a lot of noise and complaints about it, but overall I think it's a relatively low risk strategy, especially if it then enables us to reduce our debt service cost in the country. But overall, it's extremely difficult to judge the budget because in the absence of a specific economic growth target, of a specific job creation target, then what is good? How do you determine, how do you prioritize? And so as a consequence of that, you find government trying to do a lot to please different sectors of the economy without really much attention being paid to how do all of these come together to create a specific economic. What is our GDP target rate? So when the minister opens up by then saying, look, this is the forecast, this is what the IMF, etc., is forecasting our GDP to be, and then we then go straight into initiatives, etc. To me, we're still lacking a key thing to say, yes, we're forecasting 0.6% GDP growth, but we want to grow the economy by 2.5%, by 3%. And in order to do that, these are the interventions that we're going to do. And this is how these interventions then link overall to then provide us with that overall growth.
Speaking of pleasing, do you think that it pleased the SME segment?
No, I don't think that there was really a lot there. Ultimately, SMMEs, the primary thing for them is market access, because you can provide funding, you can provide development support. Without market access, you really can't do much. And unless the economy grows, it's very difficult to create market access for market opportunities for small businesses. And we saw, for example, during COVID, when there was the guarantee the government provided for SME loans, I think it was 200 billion. Only about 20 billion of that was utilized because at that time the economy had almost come to a standstill and there were no market opportunities. So banks wouldn't or couldn't lend to the small businesses because how do you lend to somebody who doesn't have a market, who doesn't have revenue? So the first thing is that we've got to sort out the market access, which means we've got to grow the economy overall to create market opportunities for small businesses.
Mr. Twala, let me come to you. We spoke prior the budget and you talked about your wish list, particularly for township businesses, and I know that you've just been to KZN looking at reviving the spaza shops in particular. What is your view with regards to the accommodation of township businesses? I did not see anything in the budget. But maybe I missed something. Maybe you did see something.
No, thank you very much, Sisti. Good afternoon to the viewers at home. Thank you for having us. The challenge is that, one, it's the issue of the stakeholder engagement. For example, is that when you talk about the township businesses and township entrepreneurs, it becomes difficult for us to read the budget because at the end of the day, we don't really understand what makes a budget. We understand that the minister, he was tabling the budget in a very difficult situation because it's an election year as well. But he tried to balance. But unfortunately, up until the minister reached out to us, or Treasury, for that matter, reach out to the most important stakeholders, which is the rural economy, the village economy, and the township economy, because those are the economies that are very critical, that are building the mainstream economy.
Yeah.
It's very important for us also just to understand as entrepreneurs in the township, when you talk about budget, what are we talking about? When you talk about reserve, that that the minister is now going and borrow from the reserves, you understand, as Brakai was saying, what is it that you're talking about? When you talk about inflations and all that, meaning in other words, remember, township entrepreneurs, rural entrepreneurs, village entrepreneurs are the future mainstream, entrepreneurs of this, of this country. Now, it's very important that we make sure that they are not left behind.
Yeah, let's talk about this Spaza Shop initiative. I know that as your commission is trying very hard to revive that sector. Tell us about what you did in KZN this past week and how you are hoping to revive the Spaza Shop sector.
Yeah, I just want to say big up to Wear Your Brand Foundation and the president, Ulukuza Ukumete. We've put together a very nice and very appealing, event where we're rebranding Spaza Shop, and we had, the premier from KZN, we had the acting DG from, Department of Small Business and Development. But what is interesting is that we had about 400 Spaza Shop owners in one room, right. Because we then said, when you talk about Spaza Shop as an industry within the retail sector, it's very important then to engage the people on the ground, so that when we put together solutions, it must be the people-driven solution. It mustn't be a solution that comes from somewhere and then pushed to the people. People on the ground must be the ones that are coming up, because they know their challenges better than anyone.
Yeah.
Then we crafted, very exciting, resolutions. One of them is to also create what we call the South African Chamber for Spaza Shop and Retail, chamber. And also, we're also coming up what we call SA, Spaza, which will look at the whole, program of the Spaza Shop industry in the township. Sounds
very, very exciting. Let's go back to the issue of the budget, Karabo. The issue of tax incentives, right? I know that there's been criticism with regards to the solar installation incentive that was announced that is coming to an end in March, if I'm not mistaken. In your view, do you think that there were enough incentives forwarded to small businesses, and how useful was this solar installation incentive, particularly not only to households but to SMEs as well?
Yeah. So I mean, one of the big challenges with the incentive is that it's a tax deduction. So in terms of your operating cash generally during the year, as an SME, you're not going to have the additional until you have to then pay your taxes, which normally is 6 months or so after your financial year end, right, or a year later. So in terms of where you currently sit and suffering from load shedding, etc., to actually have the funds to be able to go and install solar, to install inverters and things, it's difficult to do that. But what we've seen is that a lot of small business enterprise and supply development programs, especially within corporates, and we've worked with quite a few that have done that, where they focused on supporting small businesses to put in solar or generators, etc., to cope with load shedding. One of the other things I think that I noted was, the minister rightfully said that government spends generally pays a premium on products that it buys. However, it buys in bulk, and so it should be getting a discount.
A discount, yeah.
Which, almost to me said that that's going to close out small businesses from opportunities, because if you're talking about buying bulk and negotiating prices, that means you're going to large suppliers, right? And saying suppliers in these regions, suppliers in these different offices. At the same time,
you've just promulgated that procurement bill that's meant to boost small businesses, particularly black-owned businesses. So I totally understand what you are saying. But I'd like us to jump swiftly into the National Enterprise Amendment Bill that's sitting with Parliament right now. We've had some conversations about it, and I love what SBI CEO John Dludlu said. He said that South Africa does not have history of building anything. So when we are going to talk about what this bill is aimed to do, which is to establish an ombudsman office, he doesn't seem hopeful about it. What do you gentlemen think about it? Mr. Twala, let me start with you.
Yeah, for example, let me go back with the Gauteng Township Economic Development Act to say we've got an act that we also need to also nationalize. But now when we talk about that bill, that act must be also brought into the bill because it's a sort of like an overall bill. But also the issue, the whole thing that my issue is the issue of consultation.
Yeah.
Proper consultation, because you are talking about the bill that will affect the entrepreneurs in the township, in the rural areas.
Yes.
But we don't see, them participating fully in terms of that, because people need to be engaged. Most especially with the businesses. Remember, there's a lot that entrepreneurs in the township they are faced with. The issue of energy, the issue of the load shedding, and also the inflation in terms of the prices and all that, and how to run their businesses. Now, when you then talk about policy, because remember, as Township Economic Commission say, we're also looking at policy. Influencing policy, making sure that the policy talks to the people on the ground. Because at the end of the day, what's the use of having that bill, but it doesn't talk to to the people on the ground? You'll end up having the bill, but that's not implemented. But as South Africa, we are known with all those beautiful laws and bills, but the problem that we're facing is the implementation of those.
Mr. Garba, your views on the amendment bill?
Yeah, look, I mean, to the extent that it will help to I suppose, increase coordination between the different agencies that are there, CEDA, CIFA, etc. I think it's a good thing. One of the key things, I think, the establishment of the Ombudsman office also helps in the sense, especially with regards to the payment of SMEs.
Yes.
It's been a persistent issue that SMEs have had in terms of the time that it takes for them to be paid. And SMEs chronically are short of cash because they are low profit businesses. So they don't have the ability to build up cash over time. And I think that's going to end up, one hopes that the agency, that's going to be one of the focal points of it, to engage with the different municipalities, with different government departments, etc., to monitor and to police and to enforce the early payment, or at least paying SMEs on time. So I think that's one of the key things. It's a positive move, but ultimately, we'll have to see actually what are the results and the implementation.
Yeah, I have about 30 seconds left with you, and I really want to touch on the issue of elections and how small businesses and entrepreneurs should prepare themselves as we head to the elections. What are the kind of the things they should be thinking about as we head to the polls that will help them make the right decision in choosing the right people on the ballot box? Let me start with you.
Yeah. When I engage with a lot of the entrepreneurs in the township, they are closing their ears on politicians. But at the end of the day, for the 3 decades, they've never seen, anything coming to them. Now, at the end of the day, what people are saying, we will work. Remember, we work with the government of the day, irrespective of who is the government, because we are non-partisan. We are just, business people. Anybody that will really make sure that as businesses in the township, we are not left behind, but also we are no longer ignored in terms of participation and the engagement.
Yeah, Mr. Garamba?
Yeah, thanks. I think the key thing is, we must demand of whatever political party or person we support to say, what are your targets for growing the economy over the next 5 years? Annually, what are you going to do? What are your targets for reducing unemployment? And you've got to give specific targets to say, look, we're going to grow the economy with our policies. We aim to reach 2%, 3%, 4%, 5%. And then we'll be able to say in the next one, in the next budget speech, you've got to then report back to us and say, well, what have you done?
Yes.
And how much have you missed it by? Or which areas did you falter and what did you do right in order to correct whatever needs to be corrected?
Gentlemen, I must thank you for your time. One of the most important things for me, particularly in an election year, is to hear the voice of entrepreneurs and small business owners, because of exactly what Mr. Begi said, is that most of them don't want to involve themselves in politics. However, these are the same things that shape the decisions and the growth and the direction of their own businesses. Thank you very much for joining us on Point. I've been joined by Mr. Begi Twala of the Township Economic Commission of South Africa, as well as Karabo Mashukhane from 2020 Insights, and they've been sharing their views on the budget speech that we had on Wednesday. Hopefully you saw that and you have your views as well. But since we have had an announcement of the date of the elections, which is the 29th of May, heading to that, we're going to do what we've been doing over the years, and this time we want to visit your community and speak to entrepreneurs in your community to understand what they want from political leaders as we head to the elections. And we're encouraging you to please write to us. Our Facebook page is at SME on Point. Write to us, tell us where you're watching us from and where you'd like us to come to, where we can do the show from there, and we hear from you small business owners as well as entrepreneurs about what you demand from political leaders. And with that, please do remember to support small businesses in your communities and keep those rands and cents circulating. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, Nastasia Arendse will have more news for you.